Good afternoon, Gerry-Ann.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm great.
Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Once again, this is our 4th episode of our podcast, and we're going to be taking a little bit of a pause after this. But it is our podcast, and it's Thinking Out Loud. Oh gosh, I've got to look at this. Thinking Out Loud.
A
candid conversation about surviving and thriving in an accommodating world.
Yeah.
And thank you, Gerry-Ann. It is a mouthful, and I apologize for forgetting.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
But I think it's, from what we've seen, we've had an amazing audience of people that are definitely interested, definitely asking questions, and definitely thinking in a little bit of a different way of, how to celebrate different abilities and how to support each other, because that's really what we're all about. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about 2 things, really just touching on them a little bit because of our time, but starting the conversation. My name is Patricia Digby, and
Gerry-Ann Patricia.
And welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for listening. So today we're going to be talking about 2 things. One is government supports, which is kind of piggybacking off of our last podcast, which was assistive technology in this day and age. And actually we received a lot of really great feedback.
Oh, great.
From parents who were like, oh, I didn't know about that. And oh my gosh, I didn't realize about that. So I think it makes a huge difference which is why we're doing the podcast, because you live it, you breathe it, you've grown up in it. You know what works for you, obviously, but you can also give a little bit of insight for other people as to what we can do to help accommodate everybody in different aspects of our lives and our interactions. So today we're going to talk about government supports, and then we're going to talk, and again, you were the person that sort of pulled together this list of topics that you thought would really add value to the individuals who are watching the podcast. So the second one is going to be siblings with special needs, an in-depth look at sibling relationships.
Yes.
So again, we're not going to be able to cover everything in one half-hour segment, but we can definitely start making a little bit of indentation in it.
Absolutely.
So let's start with government supports.
Okay.
What do you think? What kinds of government supports are out there for people?
Well, the main one for us is Ontario Disability Support Program.
Okay, that's ODSP.
ODSP.
Everybody hears ODSP, but
yes.
Okay.
So I'm not on ODSP anymore now that I have a full-time job, but I was on it when I had a part-time job, and I just used it for basically my medical coverage. I just needed it for my medical coverage. But there's different variations of ODSP. So some people who may not be able to work will get full coverage, rent, all these different things, and assistive technology covered. Yeah.
Okay, so let's start off at the beginning. When would somebody apply for ODSP?
I think it's like 18 or 19. 18, yeah.
Okay, and what do you need in order to apply for it?
You need your psych report from the doctor.
Like a recent one or just anyone?
A recent one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so usually get one when you're like 18, when you're going on to post-secondary. So you need that. I also had a psychologist who wrote that. And then I just went and interviewed with them, and they just checked, how much money I make, because if you make too much money, you don't qualify for it.
Okay.
So for me, because I already had a job, they just covered my medications. That's all I needed. Okay. But for someone who may not have a job, they give you a little bit of money for rent, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So when you're talking about medications, does our Ontario, like OHIP, our Ontario Health Insurance Plan, it wouldn't necessarily cover all of your medications for individuals? No,
because it's free to go to a psychiatrist, but the medication is not free.
So, and it's not covered?
No. Once I was too old to be on my parents' plan, I had to get some sort of coverage. And medication, can cost $150 a month, maybe more, depending on what you're on. So luckily I got ODSP to cover for my meds.
And do they ask you what your medication is?
Yeah, they know it all. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess everything is connected through the healthcare system,
Yeah,
right?
they when you get your insurance, same idea. Like your insurance, you give them the name of your medication. They say, okay, this is covered or this much is covered. Same idea.
Okay. And then do you have to disclose to them like where you're living, what you're doing?
Yeah. Yes.
So you basically kind of have to give them a snapshot of your life.
Exactly.
And then they say, okay, this is what this person's
needs are.
These are the accommodations that they require. We think they're valid. We think these ones are realistic. These ones maybe not so much.
I had a caseworker as well, so she kind of helped me. And I had my dad as well, so he kind of was part of it. But because I had a job, so I would have to give in my pay stubs so they could see how much I made every month. Because if I made too much, I wouldn't get the coverage. So, but luckily I was good. They just covered my meds. So
what would be like 3 things that you would recommend to parents who are looking at applying for ODSP?
Well, definitely you need to get the psych report and get some research into it a little more, and meet with the caseworker and find out what is best for your child. And
And do you think a parent should be very candid about what the needs of their children are?
Absolutely.
Do you think they should be like, oh yeah, you know what, they're not too bad?
I think it's best to be honest if you want to get the full supports. Yeah, I know sometimes we're hesitant, but they're trained and they know, and it's confidential, right? No one's gonna know but in order to help your child to the best of their ability, they need to know what they need and what their exceptionalities are.
And will they? And I know you said that they interviewed you.
Yep, I met with my caseworker and I talked to her, and I signed some forms. My dad was with me. He signed off on as
like a guardian.
The guardian to help me because some of the reading and writing was hard.
Okay.
So yeah.
So then, so they will interview, they will meet with the individual who's applying.
Yep.
And then they'll meet with whoever the caregiver or the guardian is.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then were you also able to have your caseworker in that meeting, or?
My caseworker was there, was part of that. So.
And is it up to the parent and the individual to actually start the ODSP application, or is it the caseworker that says, hey, you're turning 18, we better get started?
You need to do it. So, and that's the hard thing because some people don't realize it's there. So luckily my dad knew about it, so he went to my doctor and said, look, she needs this. Can you fill out the forms? And I remember him giving her the forms, and she's like, okay, I'll fill them out. It was,
So you need your doctor to fill out a form as well?
Yeah, well, psychiatrist, doctor, yeah.
Okay.
So they need to fill out the form saying that, this person needs this. Yeah.
Sure. Just so that they have a full picture of what is required.
But you can go on online and get all those forms from Ontario Disability Support Program on their website. And then you just bring those forms to for me, it was my psychiatrist. I brought it to my psychiatrist and she just filled them all out.
I know. I almost feel now that I'm thinking about it, that if I was a parent, at 17, I would just kind of hop on, or if you're listening to this podcast, even just hop on to the website and see what's out there, what needs to be done, just so that you have an idea of how much time you're going to need to pull together
all the documentation.
All the documents.
That's the hardest part.
And do you know, do they, so say for example, you turn 18 and then you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to do this. And then you don't end up actually finishing the application process until you're halfway through 18. Will they pay you beginning when you were 18, or do they pay you as soon as your application is processed and they made a decision?
That is a good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because that's something important.
It would make sense that they would reimburse you for the time, but I'm not 100% sure. It's a good question. I'll ask my dad.
Yeah, you know what? It just makes sense to sort of just try and get these things in ASAP.
Yeah.
So at least if you've got the application in on or about your 18th birthday, then it's backdated already.
Yes.
I feel almost like with a lot of these applications, and I'm not sure, like I don't know how ODSP works, but I always think that if there is a bit of a time sensitivity, it's always good to have that stamp in that, oh yeah, they handed in their application on this date. So that gives a really good point of reference in the sense that all of their documentation was in. It was just on us that, the process took a bit longer or whatever it is. And I think by and large, people are reasonable about these kinds of things, right? So what about any other government supports that you think are...
I have a retirement disability savings plan.
Okay.
Through RBC. I think they're the only ones that have that. And it's, from what I understand, you put a certain amount in and they double it. Every time you
so they match it.
They match it, yeah. And so I just keep adding to it and they match it. And then when I retire, I can take it out and that will be my retirement.
So it's like an RRSP?
Yeah.
But it's a... Sorry, what is it called?
Registered Disability Savings Plan.
Okay, so I wonder if it's also like a little bit like an RESP.
Kind of.
Where parents can kind of put money in and then the government matches it so that when your child is ready for post-secondary, they can
kind of
access
like
that money without being
I would say it's like
taxed.
that, yeah.
And so this is with the Royal Bank?
With the Royal Bank, yeah.
And how would one go about?
So you would need to make an appointment with at the
banker,
bank. Yeah, a banker. Luckily, my dad found it. He was like, "Oh, this is perfect. We got to sign her up right away. Get her in there." Because the younger you start, the more you can accumulate, right? And I think it's put together because some people may not have a retirement fund, so this is just to kind of support us. Yeah.
So I think too, if I'm thinking about like the RESP and how many of these things work, like you said, because of that, there's a smart word for it. Because the interest rate, you earn more interest the longer it is in the actual bank account.
Yes.
Than, or in the plan, that the earlier you get. So like if a person, I guess, is diagnosed with something or, parents and caregivers realize, oh, you know what?
They can start
this
it
individual
early.
may need some extra support as they grow older. They can start kind of
putting money in
and starting to kind of take advantage of that.
And I don't remember when I had it, but I want to say it was pretty young when we got it. I was at least in high school when I started putting money into it. So, and I'm still putting money into it now.
So you just keep continue. I guess so. It's like any kind of registered retirement savings plan, right?
And then I can take it out when I need to retire, and I
so that's in your name, I guess.
It's in my name. Yeah.
Because now you're over 18, I guess. So I guess that's the difference in the sense that
I think
you can keep working and saving in this way.
Yeah, I think my dad might be on it as well as like to help me. But that's it. Yeah. But it's technically mine under my name. Yeah.
And is there a cap to how much you can put in?
No, I don't think so. Probably. I'm not 100% sure. There must be. Yeah, there must
of course.
be.
Otherwise, people would just be putting in money. Sure.
There must be, but yeah, I'm not sure the exact amount. I can find out and let you know.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's different for each person. I think the main thing is to just ask. Like, ask the question, go into the bank, make the appointment, listen, because they don't know either, right? Like, not everybody knows everybody's business, and that's such a great resource to have. With your own money, that you're not actually putting in more money. It's just an incentive to continue saving.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are the two main ones I'm on.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And so for ODSP, you'll just continue on as long as you require that.
Yeah, I'm not on an ODSP anymore now.
Oh, okay. So as you're
once I got full time, then I did not require it because I when you get full-time, you have medical coverage. So I didn't really need, so I was like, yay.
You know what? Everybody's life changes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I think when we're looking at supports, you know, like I look at yourself, you've been like continuing to do different things and kind of your life has evolved and, you know, now you're independently working full time. And like you said, you don't need it anymore. But for other, you know, individuals and especially I know with medical expenses, which are like
that's the hardest,
ridiculously crazy. I think it makes such a huge difference for families to at least get that groundwork in so that they can decide for themselves whether they need, you know, whether they're okay or whether, you know, they need to still kind of access that additional support.
I know my caseworker was so proud she's like, that I came off ODSP. She was so like, wow, you got a full-time job, congratulations, you worked so hard, you know, so proud of you, you know. She's like, yeah,
it does
so
take
nice.
a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of like, you know, independence to keep working towards something like that. So we've talked a little bit about government supports and you said those were the two main ones.
Yeah.
So the ODSP and also the RDSP.
Yes.
Okay, which is a bank related sort of support that's government support that's done through your local bank. Let's switch gears a little bit and again like just start to begin to touch upon sibling relationships because I know that you mentioned that you know that this was an area that you thought would really add value to our discussion and to just help each other understand, like help people understand each other a little bit.
Yeah, I think we don't look at the siblings as much because we're focusing on, some of the parents are focusing on their child who has special needs. And sometimes I find that very, from my perspective, a little bit difficult. My siblings, I could tell that they had a hard time dealing with having a sibling with special needs who needed constant attention. If that makes sense. And I was able to kind of see that, you know. It's hard, you know, when you're a teenager to understand that maybe, you know, Gerry-Ann learns differently or Gerry-Ann has anxiety. You know, it's very hard. And I see a little bit of like anger and sometimes resentment in the siblings. So.
Did you, if you don't mind me asking, and feel free to say like it's too much.
No worries.
Like, did you realize that you learned differently, that you felt anxious more than other people? Like,
yes, I knew I was more anxious. I remember telling my mom, I said, I need to be on something for anxiety.
Like, how did you know, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, before with the anxiety and OCD, which I have, I wouldn't like leave the house. I was anxious. I was always worried about my parents dying and, you know, just like constant fear. And then once I went on medication, I felt like kind of free almost. I was like, oh, I still had the anxiety, but not to the point where I was unable to function. Yeah, it's made a difference really, the medication and seeing a psychiatrist. But it, you know, I think it was very difficult for my siblings to see, you know, oh, Gerry-Ann's anxious again. Oh, no, you know, Gerry-Ann does this. Oh, why should she do that? You know, why does Gerry-Ann need extra help? Why, you know, it's very difficult, and I feel bad that, you know, that, yeah.
So, I guess I'm thinking like, so the anxiety was before the seizure, like before you were diagnosed with the seizure activity?
Actually, no.
Like, how did that, that's what I mean, like, how did that play out, I would say?
The anxiety started presenting in, like, elementary school, after the seizures, you know. After the seizures, you know, it started off just, like, a few little things, and then it became to, like, full-blown OCD, just checking, making sure things are there, you know, worrying about mom and dad leaving me, constant, like, what ifs, Because people think, they think with OCD, they like, oh, you're obsessed with cleaning. Well, yeah, I'm obsessed with cleaning too, but it's more of the worries that your brain can't stop. So I would say that kind of happened like elementary school after kind of the seizures started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And were you ever worried about the seizures? Like, were you worried about, like, oh my gosh, like, what if I just, like, fall right down or I'm walking?
I guess so. I never really thought of that. I was always worried about other people, not really me. I was always worried about, mommy and daddy. I'm worried about, are they going to be okay? They used to say, just checking all the time. And they're like, just checking. So, or we had a code word, have a good day. So I had to be like, have a good day. And they would like, have a good day. Because that means, is everything okay? We had like a little bit of a code. So,
It sounds like your parents really were very open and very observant about, well, I know you, so yourself, and how to help alleviate some of those, anxieties that you were experiencing.
Yes, I find with the OCD, like, if I don't, like, I need to do it or hear the desired response to make that worry go away. So, if that makes sense. So
can you give me, like, what would be an example?
So I'd be like, let's say I'm worried, or like, are you okay? Are you okay? And they'll be like, Gerry-Ann, yeah, I'm okay. But I want to hear it, because if they don't answer me, then I'm like, is everything okay? Are you okay? So just like, kind of like, I like the reassurance. So.
Well, I know, for example, at school.
Yes. I'll ask you.
At the beginning, I remember you would say, like, you'd be like, Patricia, like, oh, is this okay? Or is that all right?
Yeah.
And in my head, I'd be like, of course it's okay. Like, it's amazing. Like, thank you, Gerry-Ann. Like, I appreciate that.
But I constantly worry. It's in my mind. I'm like, did I do something wrong? Was everything okay? Like,
yeah. And then one day, like, I remember you came up to me. Like, I just kind of thought, like, okay, like, that's kind of just interesting. Like, but maybe she just, you're new to the job. I knew you were new to the board. Like,
yeah.
I was like, okay, like, she's just like keen, like,
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, okay. And then one day you just came up to me and you were like, Patricia, like, I just wanted to share with you, like, I do have this anxiety, and when I ask you if it's okay, like, just when you say it's okay, then I just feel better. And then I was like, oh, okay. Like, it was the first time I'd ever really had somebody, like anybody actually, that I've ever met that was so open and confident and comfortable in their own skin to be able to say, like, this is what I kind of, like, need from you in order to just, like, keep, copacetic or whatever the word is.
Well, I want you to understand, and don't be like, oh, well, why is she doing that? I want people to understand there's a reason, so that's why I like to explain,
No, for
people
sure.
probably wonder, oh, why is she worried that I'm mad, or why is she worried about this? It's because of the OCD.
But it made a difference, though, because you know what? Now, when you say something, I just know, like, just to be like, yeah, everything's great, Gerry-Ann. Or now to the point where sometimes, like, I can almost, like, and I think it's because, obviously we've worked together for a little while. We've got to know each other a bit.
Yeah.
But I can kind of, like,
pick it up,
anticipate that you may be, like, wondering about something. So I'll be like, Gerry-Ann, we're all good. Or, you did a great job of that. Thank you. Or so I'll try and, like, just kind of be a bit proactive maybe in a way for it. But I think it's important to know that. Like, it's important to know sometimes, I think, as a parent, as a colleague, as a coworker, as a just really community member, it's important to sort of understand sometimes when someone is, asking for that reassurance that they're asking for it, and it's something small that the other person can do, usually without even thinking about it. But it makes such a huge impact.
It really does, because it just, you feel so much better. The panic is gone. The anxiety is gone. If someone just says it to reassure me, I'm like, okay, I'm good now. Okay, they're not mad. I'm doing a good job. It's like, I always worry in my mind.
So I guess when we're talking like about siblings and you're thinking about other, well, kids really, like 'cause we all grow up, like I come from a family of 5, you know, and, you know, everybody's still, when you're growing up in a family, you don't just meet each other at 18 or at 25 when you kind of know a little bit more about the world and are more experienced. When you're growing up in that kind of environment and one of your siblings is requiring more of that reassurance, is requiring a little bit more of that, you know, attention and that care.
It's hard.
You know,
it's hard because you know, you're growing, you're young, and you don't understand maybe. You know, my parents tried it very hard to explain to my siblings, you know, this is just the way Gerry-Ann learns. This is the way Gerry-Ann sometimes, you know, she has anxiety, and for the most part they were understanding. But you could see, you know, they were like, oh, why is she doing that? I'm like, yeah. So, you know, now that they're older, you know, my sister and brother are older, they have kids of their own, they're a lot more understanding, and I think they kind of made a connection a little bit more now that they're older, and they kind of, you know, been around the you know, and so they're like, oh, okay, this is just the way Gerry-Ann is, you know. And they just look at me and they're like, okay, that's the way she is, and yeah, that's great.
And they accommodate. I guess they're more, as I think everybody is, we're always more accommodating.
Absolutely.
I think as we get older, you know, like that's just the way it works. Or
yeah, like my brother helps me with my finances. I don't really know much about my finance in that sense, but he helps me with that. And then, you know, my sister's always there to support me if I need her. So, yeah. But I do think it is very hard when you're growing up and you may not understand what your siblings, I don't like to use disability, but exceptionality is. You know, may not understand anxiety, may not understand, you know, a learning disability. Why, you know, it's probably very difficult for a sibling.
Yeah, because we all go through our own hardships, right? Like we all go through our own, I always think like everybody has their own story. Things that we're, you know, that we're happy about, things that we're sad about, things we're scared about, things we're unsure about. And sometimes when one person is, you know, taking up a lot of your parents' time, and you know in your heart, like, yeah, like they need to be, like mom or dad needs to be there for them, for that person, you feel like you have to put your needs a little bit on the back burner. Yeah. And, you know, or deal with it yourself, or do that kind of stuff. And then sometimes I feel like maybe sometimes people are like, I just want to like just have that time for me. Like I want to have the meltdown and I want to go out and do the because that's what it looks like from the outside, right?
Exactly. They don't quite understand, right? You know, so I don't understand why she's freaking out or she's getting upset, right? Because they don't know what it feels like, right? So, and it's hard for a sibling, you know, sometimes, you know, you get jealous, you want mom and dad's attention, and, you know, which is understandable, right? I think definitely as you get older, you grow and you understand, but definitely when we were younger, it was very difficult for them to see, you know, me have anxiety. They didn't quite understand, and learning disability, you know.
Is there anything that you think, like, looking from the outside in, I can't think of anything really that,
other than just to tell your other children, you know, explain a little bit more about why they're learning this way or why they have anxiety, and just telling them, just be upfront, you know, this is why Gerry-Ann is like this because she has this. I think if you don't know, then it's harder to understand, right? So.
And I guess too, as you've grown up and as you've kind of matured and come into your own, your parents have been able to take that step back. And then now you're more cognizant of what you need, what works for you. And you won't necessarily put yourself in a position where you know that's not going to work for you. So it's on
Yeah.
you as opposed to your
Somebody
parents
else.
making that decision, or your parents staying at home with you, or your parent, you know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
that way.
Like example, I get stressed out in like crowds or situations. So like, you know, for years I was forced to go to like family outings, and I didn't want to because it caused me so much anxiety. But now I say, no, I'm not going. You know, I will go if I'm comfortable, but for the most part, like, I have control, and I want to, you know, if I'm not feeling that I'm comfortable going to this place, I'm not going to go. But it was hard for my parents at first. They had to be like, okay, well, Gerry-Ann's an adult now. She doesn't want to go. She's not going to go. But I think that was hard for them.
Yeah, and it also gave them a chance too, like to go to a family outing and not, well, I'm just thinking in
No, I
a
know what
very
you're saying.
limited way, you know, for example, when the kids were little, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and you have an opportunity to go out for dinner
Mm-hmm.
with just another couple with no kids.
Yeah.
It's not that you don't love going out for dinner with your kids.
No, I know what you're
You
saying.
do, but it's so nice to be able to just go and not have to like second guess, second think, or anything like that. You know, you just don't have to think about
No, I know
the
what you're
additional
saying.
people, right? Whereas like now I think because like you said, you can stay home by yourself, or you can be like, hey, I'll come for an hour, but then
Yeah.
after that I'll just scooch home.
I have my own car. I can do my, like, yeah, I kind of have control. Before, I felt like I did not have control. I had to go where they said and do what they said. And that caused more anxiety. So, but now they realize, they're like, okay, yeah.
And it gives them a chance to go out with your siblings as well. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
as they were growing up, and I mean, obviously even now.
No,
but
yeah, no.
to have their time to,
Yeah,
you know,
to be with
continue
them.
to develop their relationships individually with them
Absolutely,
too, right?
yeah. Yeah, and I still go, like, I still do family functions, but I just kind of choose what makes me comfortable, you know. And they respect that, you know.
How would you say, like, I mean, we're running a little bit out of time, and like I said, this is sort of one of those conversations that we'll definitely go back to a little bit, but how do you feel, like, do you think you did something over the last few years to sort of change that relationship between you and your siblings? Do you think it was just like all of you guys just kind of grew older and like figured it out? Like it just kind of happened naturally? Or do you think there's something that...
I think the main thing is my siblings having children. They have an understanding now that they have, I don't know, just made, the connection is different now. I notice once they've, you know, started having their own kids, the understanding was a little more there. And I guess that's what I noticed. And being older. But once, you know, my siblings started having their own kids, it was like, oh, okay. So I don't know.
And how did you feel, if you don't mind me asking? How did you feel growing up? Like, how did you feel towards your siblings? Like, how do you feel about your siblings?
You know, I love my siblings. I didn't think they liked me. So, you know, it was hard, right? So, and I think I was a bit of a burden on them, to be honest. You know, I always wanted them to like me, and they probably did, but just, you know, the siblings, right?
And siblings are like, it's true though. Like,
Yeah.
I think there is that thing about like sibling rivalry, like,
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
you're growing up, like, nobody totally gets along with their siblings.
Of course not.
All
Of course
the time.
not. No.
And I think that, but maybe because with the, like you were saying, with the anxiety and being a little bit more intuitive about that kind of stuff, like, you know, whereas one person be like, oh my gosh, I just can't stand that person, and they slam the door, and then that's that until the next day, and then like, hey, can I borrow your sweater? Like, you know, you know, maybe in some ways you'd be like, oh, like you would maybe think about it a little bit more and be like, oh gosh, like, you know, like that kind of idea.
Yep. Absolutely.
But I think it's something very valid. Like, I think it's important. I know for myself as a parent and just thinking about it, I think it's important for parents to have those candid conversations.
Absolutely.
You know, with not only their children, that when their children are going through different difficulties or different experiences, but also to make that time to share and just talk about and give a venue to open up and
yes,
share your feelings about it
and learn. Yeah, learn.
You know?
Learn a little bit more about the different needs we all have.
Because I think even though you don't necessarily are in a place where you can like act on it, because maybe emotionally you're not there, maybe just your age-wise, like developmentally, like you're not going to tell someone who's 3 years old that like they're not going to understand it the same way. Like we need to have that.
You need to explain it in different ways depending on their developmental. I think it was probably hardest for them when they were teenagers to understand, because they're teenagers, they want to act out, they want to. They don't want to have to deal with the sister who has anxiety. So, that's what I think probably was the hardest time, right? But I totally understand. It's difficult being with somebody who has anxiety and constant needs reassurance. I see it. I live it. So there's it's just the way it is.
Yeah,
So.
And I think we all need our own space.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like I think
sometimes people need a break from people, and it's the way it is.
And I think that's one of the nicest things that I like about you, is that you understand.
Oh, thank you.
And are what's the word? I guess just like compassionate towards other people's feelings and how, and it's like, well, okay, like I get that. I get why it could be that way.
Yeah.
And then you kind of just like leave it be. Like, to sort of just try to just let it go and then still be true to yourself and your feelings for, your family, your friends, your colleagues, all of that kind of stuff. Because I think, again, like you live within your own body. So you kind of know what, like all of us do, right? Like we all know like what we're feeling within us. But I think it takes a really strong person to be able to understand and give that opportunity to let others, especially people in your close circle, to work through and to figure out where they stand in that whole family dynamic.
Yes.
And how they can be their own person and still be part of that family dynamic as well.
Absolutely.
And not necessarily be sympathetic, but be understanding.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a great way of saying it.
Because I don't think anybody needs like
sympathy. No, and that's not what we want. We just want, understanding and acceptance,
Yeah, and if you say you want to take a break.
I need a break.
Or else my body will tell me that I need a break and make that break happen for me.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any kind of experiences before we just end off that you can kind of share, or do you want to keep it for like another time?
So I, like, going back to anxiety, I guess we could talk about, like, there was one incident where, like you were saying, your body will tell you when you need a break. So I was at a wedding, in a wedding, and I knew because I had anxiety, I knew I couldn't really be in the wedding, but I felt kind of obligated to. So during the wedding, I had a big anxiety attack, and I was walking down the aisle in tears and had a huge, so I should have listened to my body. I should have listened to my body. So, but sometimes you feel obligated to, do these things, but in the back of your mind that, it doesn't feel right. I'm anxious, So you got to really go with how you feel, and I didn't want to ruin that person's wedding either. I felt bad that I was crying walking down the aisle. I felt so bad. And I they said I didn't ruin their wedding, but I just felt terrible but I knew, like, as soon as I started walking down the aisle, I just felt cold sweat and shakes, and I was like, I'm out. So my body told me, it was like, you didn't listen to me, you're out of here. So
yeah,
so
it's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard because you just want to be there for everybody, and you want to, you know, like in your head, you know, like this is not that big of a deal. Like it shouldn't be a big deal. This is something important. I want to do this, and then for whatever reason,
it just clicked. I'm like, nope, and then it just happened. Yeah. So, you know, I learned. I know, you know, I need to listen to my body, and if I don't feel right about something, you know, as much as I want to support and be part of certain things, I can't, because it's too much emotionally, anxiety-wise.
And that comes, I guess, from just being like self-realization and just, you know, understanding that you don't need to understand why you feel some way in order to like listen to what you need to do.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we're like trying to always like, oh, like this is why I should be doing this, and oh, I should be doing this. Like we're trying to always rationalize everything. But I think in life, you know, we can't always rationalize things, and sometimes we're taking things in. Our body is like a computer that's taking in and feeling, and like there's so many things going on, we can't even begin sometimes to sort of feel that way, right? Well, thank you very much, Gerry-Ann.
Thank you
for joining us. Thank you for sharing your, you know, your information, especially about the grants, and then also starting to touch a little bit about, you know, just family dynamics, really, and, you know, being able to attend to the needs of, you know, each other in a family.
Yeah.
And,
absolutely.
And coping with those needs when they happen at times that maybe
unexpected
don't align with what our regularly scheduled program is.
Yes, that's the hardest part.
This is going to be the last podcast for a little while. We are going to release it. We're hoping to do more podcasts in the future, for sure, because this is something I think that a lot of people have questions about. And are really interested in learning and listening a little bit from the other side to get an understanding.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was great.
It was. And thank you to all of our viewers for joining us over the past 4 sessions and episodes. We'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Soon, yeah. Absolutely.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.